I looked around, spat out of the vortex, a terrified spider soaked and clinging to my shoulder. Mia was beside me, in a rather barren wood. Thankfully, we landed on a grassy knoll. No, not that one. A rough cobblestone path led towards the sounds of musical instruments and murmuring voices. Mia decided to try to climb a nearby tree whilst I sat on the grass, badly injured, wringing the water out of my clothing. She failed with an athletics check of 6 and a -1 to strength. It seemed to be morning. Looking around the area, it seemed like the outskirts of the forest where I lived. I decided to head cautiously towards the music while Mia insight-checked the spider, deducing that it was utterly terrified. As we walked along the path, we approached a tavern. I checked the compass the mayor had given me to see the location of his monkey. It pointed north, not the direction we were going then. I headed to the tavern, passing an old sign reading, "The Delightfully Imperfect Curious Kingdom" above the door. Inside, the room seemed to be 30 feet by 30 feet and empty, save for a table with a conch shell. Silent. I tried to coax the spider from my shoulder, thinking if I could cast light on it and make it glow, it might light up the darkness. It was still terrified and bit me. Abandoning that plan, I imbued a stone with light and threw it into the darkness. It vanished into it, then bounced back out. Some kind of magical darkness, then. The conch began to vibrate. I picked it up and held it to my ear. A voice asked if I wanted to play a game. I said no, and the darkness faded, revealing Seth and Dave still tied together by the rope, on opposite sides of the room behind iron bars. The chains on Dave tightened. Seeing this, and urged by Mia, I hurriedly agreed to play. The conch went silent. Mia cast Mage Hand to try to remove the gag from Dave. It took the form of a snail and very slowly began sliming its way towards him. I inspected the bars around Seth, seeing no obvious way to open them, or to get in or out of the room he was in, save for a hatch that didn't seem to have any way to open. I carefully stepped outside, and as I did so, the sound of music and voices once more began to fill my ears. I could see windows. So I hit one, or tried to. That roll of 5 saw my blow bounce off the window, smashing it and piercing myself for a further 2 points of damage. I gave up and went back inside. Doors opened, revealing a table laden with food. There was a small tree with bananas on it, and a kettle with a small mitt. I thorn-whipped a large cooked bird into the room I was in, and then attempted to stuff it into Seth's cage, thinking perhaps that if we fed Seth and Dave, then somehow they might escape. As Mia went into the room to get the kettle, lured by the temptation of hot tea, Seth and Dave were suddenly dragged through hatches in their cages and into the next room. I stopped trying to force the fat bird through the bars and munched on it as I went into the room. It was utterly delicious, and I certainly felt better after having it. I felt the conch vibrating as I did so. I answered and was asked to pick number 1 or 2. After a quick discussion with Mia, where we both felt obliged to pick the even number, we chose 2, and then I face-planted into the nearest cake. A sandwich appeared in front of Dave, and the conch vibrated again. Again I answered, and the voice told me that number 2 had to eat the sandwich. I relayed this to Dave, and he tried to swallow the egg and cress sandwich in one go. It's not a flavour he particularly enjoys. A constitution check of 7 saw him choking it down, the eggs tasting slightly off, but the mission was accomplished. The conch rang, and I was asked to pick 1, 2, or 3. Once again, I chose 2. Another door opened and the food began to rot in the room we were in. The buttercream on my face becoming mouldy and hard. Seth remained in his cage, and Dave was dragged up and out from his, disappearing from our sight. He followed me into the next room, the spider piggybacking on my shoulder, scuttling away. The door behind us closed. Seth sealed into darkness. Stairs led down, stone stairs, and we followed them to a small arena with seating and a depression in the centre, as Dave was slowly lowered from the ceiling into the pit, still chained. The conch rang again, but this time I answered it and asked it to leave a message. It went dead. More clanking came from the ceiling and a small light appeared from above, but it was too dark to tell what could be up there. Dave cast Divine Sense and detected something partially undead. I cast Guidance on him as a precaution. Seth, in the darkness, became aware of a pair of feet belonging to a humanoid standing behind him. He had no idea who it was. The creature flashed a large, elongated, pearly white smile and introduced itself as Mr. Astor, and said that he was quite well known for playing games, and that we had just played the good game. Now it was time for the bad one. He sucked Seth into a vortex. Two black, hairy, thick-toed feet descended, followed by hairy legs and colourful shorts. Whatever it was hung there briefly from the ceiling before being dropped to the ground. It was a large gorilla. The conch vibrated again, and I answered, the voice saying we had to hit each other and the first to go unconscious was lose. I asked where Seth was, but this request was ignored. They really need to work on their customer service. Thinking logically, I hit Mia, since she was the weakest and the most likely to go unconscious first. I did apologise as I struck her, doing 2 points of damage. The gorilla looked confused. It signalled to Dave, asking if it should hit me. Dave nodded, and it took a punch at me, hitting me and knocking me prone. I feigned unconsciousness. Badly. I tried to swing my mace up to hit it between the legs, but missed. It stepped back and hit out at Mia for 2 points of bludgeoning damage. Enough was enough. I wild-shaped into a draft horse and pummeled it with my hooves. It hit me back, but was no match for my horse form as I stamped it into oblivion. The conch, now contained within my horse form, vibrated. I opened my mouth and the voice echoed from within, asking if we wanted a rest or to carry on. Mia shouted back a rest, and after some confusion, no doubt caused by the fact that the conch was now inside a horse, the speaker from the conch seemed to understand. The doors to the feast room reopened. As a gesture of apology for hitting her, I allowed Mia to ride on my back, and she plaited my mane. Seth was waiting in the room, now unchained. Dave's chains also fell away, and he was able to come with us. He was now completely free. I dropped my wild shape, ending up on the floor with Mia on top of me. I wriggled out from underneath her and handed Seth back the peekaboo ring. We had an understanding. He knew I had taken it, and we wouldn't speak of it again. I crawled under the table and fell asleep whilst the others searched the room. Dave found his armour, and Seth found the filters on Google Meet. Approximately 8 hours later, we woke, feeling refreshed. I picked up the banana tree and carried it through to the new room opened before us. On the way, I grabbed a goblet of punch and emptied it out, watering the tree roots with it. I thought that perhaps if we combined the elements of the puddle that we believed was Sir Dampish into the goblet, we may somehow be able to reform him, but then realised that we really had no way of knowing what the liquid was. It could be Sir Dampish, or it could be some angry water elemental, and how could we reform him anyway? There were 5 chairs in a circle. I plonked the tree in one and sat in the seat beside it, absently sucking the punch from one of the roots. Mia was wondering why Dave and Seth seemed to want to tie each other up, Dave suggesting that since he had armour and Seth was now armed with cutlery, if they were tied together, then they may be able to operate somehow as one attacker. The table in the room had a cup and ball on it. There was a familiar vibration. I reached for the conch before realising it was coming from the cup and ball. Not knowing how it worked, I held the ball to my ear, the cup to my mouth, before swapping them round. Voice again asked if we wanted to play a game. I said okay, and the others joined me. As we took our seats, a strange figure emerged from the shadows and introduced himself as William Astor. He wanted to play one final game. Rock, paper, curse. The last uncursed person would win freedom. As for the curses, I double-checked that my tree was not a former player, and was assured that it wasn't, although William Astor seemed to think that I was rather strange, and perhaps shouldn't be allowed to answer the phones. Seth volunteered to go first, and he was up against Dave. Dave lost. A mason jar appeared in front of him with a heart in it, beating in time with his own heart, a coldness entering his chest. Seth and I were playing next, and I lost. A black circle appeared in my hand, taking on the form of a diamond. I used an arcana check to discern that it was activated by something specific, but didn't know what. Astor was up next, facing Mia. He beat her, and Mia got a flash of guilt as she saw visions of herself committing the darkest and vilest of crimes. She was overwhelmed by guilt. I took out the diary I had found within the tree and wrote in it, "We all got cursed today. Poor Mia thinks she killed people, even though she's not strong enough to batter anyone. I wish I knew how to undo it." Seth faced Astor, losing, and his curse resulted in a blast radiating from him, everyone except for Seth becoming naked. Astor laughed awkwardly. This was not how he was expecting the game to end. As we tried to argue for the tree having a go, since it was sitting at the table, a 6th player presented themselves. The spider. Astor changed the rules. The winner would live and the loser would die. The spider won, and, true to his word, Astor exploded. Nothing else changed. Dave's heart was in a jar, Mia was racked with guilt, and I had a diamond on my hand. One thing did change. A new doorway opened up, and that is where we will pause for now.
Would you like to play a game?